Alright, so I've decided to do a devlog regarding a game that I am developing at the moment on a very part-time kind of casual basis because I'm juggling it with a PhD and some casual work. So progress is a bit slow, but basically I don't have a lot of avenues for feedback on it, and I don't have an easy way of showing it to people. So I've decided to upload some footage to YouTube of the game, which will appear in a second. So I won't talk about it at length now. I'll just launch straight into the game footage. But basically, it's a 2D Metroidvania with graphics that I've drawn by hand and music that I've made and am making. At the moment, it's in a fairly rudimentary state. So what you'll see is it'll start with the menu system. A lot of the graphics for that are made, but you'll see gaps where assets that aren't yet created will be, like level maps and things like that. And then the gameplay will start. It begins with you landing in your ship on a planet. You have 3 minutes each time you land. I won't explain the story now. I'll do that afterwards. But you need to get back to your ship before those 3 minutes are up. Otherwise, you pretty much certainly die. An enemy appears that you can't really fight against and is much faster than you. So you need to get back within the time limit. And you collect whatever upgrades you can in that time. They don't take effect unless you get them safely back to your ship, and they will help you on your next run, allowing you to explore further and go in different directions. And there's going to be a few different planets that you can land on in the game. Yeah, as I said, I won't talk about it now. I'll talk about it after the game footage, so I'll just upload that. So that's 3 minutes of the game that I'm working on at the moment. The working title is Sun Parasites. That's coming from the plot, which is kind of like this strange, slightly silly science fiction plot, where basically there's this organism that acts as a parasite on suns or takes over a solar system. And in the initial part of their life cycle, they kind of mysteriously and insidiously appear in a sun and start changing its chemical makeup so that it emits a particular wavelength of light that then allows them to thrive within that solar system. And the next part of their life cycle is they start to appear on the surrounding planets as eyeballs. So that's why there's that particular enemy floating around that you saw there, that kind of cracks out of its shell. The reason that there's a 3-minute time window for you to be on the planet, and this reasoning came afterwards. Initially, it was just a gameplay idea, and I have built a plot around it. Hopefully, that's not super obvious, or hopefully it won't be super obvious by the time it's finished. But there's this idea that the initial civilization that was there, they realized what was happening. They realized that the light from the sun was changing and that it was allowing these organisms to slowly appear and take over. So they started to build a shield around the sun to block out those specific frequencies of light. But they didn't finish it. They only got a slither of it done before they were wiped out. And that slither is currently rotating around the sun, creating a kind of shadow that is falling on the planet when you land on it. So there's a 3-minute window for you to get there. But towards the end of that window, there's a bit of light starting to come through, and the eyes start to wake up and chase you around. And there's also possibly some extra layer on top of that regarding the eyes being observers and creating like a waveform collapse. So some extra kind of quantum bullshit possibly, but it might be unnecessary complexity, I'm not sure, because I don't want it to be a story-driven game. I just want it to be a game that exists within a fiction. I want there to be a reason for the things that are there, even if it's not a fleshed out narrative that progresses heaps. And I do want the story to be kind of optional. So at the start of the game, it's going to be in that kind of space menu, and then with the big reverby soundtrack, and then a brain is going to float across onto the screen and ask, would you like to know why you're floating in space? And you can say yes, in which case there'll be a brief exposition on, well, just, giving you a bit of plot and a bit of reasoning as to why you're there. I don't know exactly what form that storytelling will take yet. Or you can say no, and then it just says, oh, okay, brilliant, off you go then. And you just select which planet you want to land on, and you have no idea what you're doing. So, yeah, that's basically it for plot at the moment. But that's where the title comes from, the Sun Parasites title. But it doesn't really give away the gameplay at all, and it might not be a particularly catchy title. So I may rethink it or come up with something better. So the next steps that I am working on, firstly, I want to finish that one planet. So there's quite a few layers. It's very kind of vertical, the overall map. And there's, different tile sets and enemies as you get deeper down. And basically, I want to finish that so that I can start making a map, because if I start making the map now, I would have to change it with the level, and it just creates extra work for myself. So I'm going to finish the overall planet, and then I'm going to do the map. It's going to be, so there will be one map for each planet. Each one's going to be hand-drawn. And so basically just one big sprite that you can see before you land. That's what that big gap on the menu was, just before you select the planet to land on, or before you select to land on whichever planet you have selected. And then you'll also be able to look at it when you pause the game. So the idea is that it's got to be quite informative, because if you are, 2 minutes in and all of a sudden you realize, actually I don't know the quickest way back to the ship. Being able to consult a map to figure out the fastest way is going to be vital. Someone making noise out there. Don't know if you can still hear me. But the map, there are particular things that I really want it to do well. Like, I want it to be really useful because, for instance, in certain like Metroidvanias or even just the Metroid games, sometimes you're kind of exploring and you look at the map and you want to get from A to B and you can see, oh, here's the fastest route through these rooms. And you start going that way and then you remember, because you get to some door or something that's a one-way door and you could only go through it from the other way, but that's not represented on the map at all. So there are going to be one-way kind of situations. There already are in the level that I've made, but I want to make sure they're really clearly represented on the map, so that you can make maximum use of it and you don't feel like you've been betrayed by it. Because I mean, if you don't get back to your ship on time, it's game over. Try again. So it would be annoying if that happened because the map was bogus. So that's the next thing I'm going to work on, and also music, because that particular track I made in Cubase, and I don't have a MIDI keyboard, so it's kind of drag and drop notes, and I think you can hear that in the melody at certain points. They kind of just feel like a random bundle of notes that I've then looped, which is more or less what they are. I'm not super unhappy with the music, but it could definitely do with some tweaking. And there's going to be 2 tracks for each planet. So there's going to be, before you land, you'll be able to select, do you want the upbeat music or the ambient music? The reason I'm doing that is because if you listen to the same 3-minute track like 8 or 9 times in a row, you're going to probably be sick of it, even if it's a total banger. So I want there to be an ambient option, just because ambient music it demands less attention. So you might not even notice if it loops or anything like that, but it still creates atmosphere and immersion. So yeah, and I also really like making the music, so it's kind of, I don't mind giving myself extra work to do there. But yeah, no, if you have any thoughts or ideas, feel free to put them in the comments.